Hi everybody, it's Dan's Monsters here. Welcome to the Monster Pod. I shall ramble on again about all the things that have influenced me over these many years. Today I'm going to talk about a book that's very, very dear to me, and I think it's possibly one of the greatest collections of ghost stories ever written, certainly in the British Isles, and it's called Sleep No More by the author LTC Rolt. It was first published in 1948 and has had a couple of reissues, but isn't currently in print, I don't believe. And Rolt only wrote this one collection of ghost stories, never wrote any more, which is a real shame. Now, it's a fantastic collection, very reminiscent of another of my favourite authors, M.R. James, whom Rolt was a big fan of. In fact, he was introduced to them when he was about 8 or 9 and loved James. But he was an engineering historian by trade, and he wrote very popular biographies of Brunel and Thomas Telford and many, many books about the UK's industrial past. The book he was most well known for was one called Narrowboat, which was a love letter to the British canal system, and the popularity of this book led to his involvement with the reinvigoration of the canal system as a holiday destination in the British Isles and the start of the Inland Waterways Association. So all those canal boats, when you're walking along them, the reason a lot of them are there and the reason you can book a holiday on a canal is one of them being LTC Rolt. Now, unlike many of the ghost stories of people like M.R. James and Algernon Blackwood, etc., these stories are all set within an industrial past and present. They involve foundries, they involve on the car racing track, they involve trains, they involve mines, and of course they involve canals. But he also had a massive love for the country and could see the effect that these industries were having on the countryside. So his knowledge of the countryside and his knowledge of our industrial past combined to make these some of the most stunning tales of dark forces not relinquishing, if you will, to our modern inventions. The ancient ways unmovable no matter what by these new technologies. And the unusual subject matter, such as racing cars and, for example, create a unique and unforgettable tales. And also some contain these strange horrors of almost Lovecraftian elements, creepy, like otherworldly, other dimensions. The ancient world will give no quarter to these modern sensibilities. It's like a clash of the modern man meets the mystery of nature, but nature will always win. And yeah, they are just really fascinating. I discovered this book thanks to a neighbour and dear friend of mine who has now passed away, who was a big fan of Rolt. Bill was a big fan of engineering and cars and motorbikes and anything that had an engine in it and used oil. He was a neighbour of mine where we used to live, and he would always be tinkering with some bit of kit over the weekend, and I'd pop over and say hello and crack a beer open, and he'd tell me about all this stuff that he'd done in the past with these cars, and before they all was sealed in a big plastic box, and all the adventures he had. And I even went on a couple with him. We drove up to the other side of Aberdeen to pick up I think it was a Fiat car that had a very special, I didn't know, but it was something special about this Fiat car and he really wanted it. So yeah, so he introduced me to all, for somebody who wasn't a engineering person, you know, I was a film and comics nerd, which he just didn't get at all. Although his favourite film was Whistle Down the Wind, so that is a classic. But he sort of got me into a bit of this Victorian engineering and the wonders of the Victorian inventors, which, you know, good or bad, there's many an argument for it and against it, but, you know, the technology that they went forward on, and those bridges are still standing and some of those houses are still standing. So yeah, he got me fascinated into it. So one day we were sat around having a beer and he was telling me about Narrowboat, obviously his favourite book. He said, you've really got to read it, and he lent it me. I read it, and it was fascinating. considering that we've always lived near canals, it was an amazing book. And then when he went on to tell me, oh, by the way, he wrote a series of ghost stories, I was like, what? Since when? He said, oh, and he told me the name of it, and I searched on the internet, and lo and behold, I found it. Only cheap at the time. I think they do, unfortunately, they do go for quite big money now. I found a copy, and whenever I'm in the wild, and I see one in a bookshop, I always pick a copy up. If I can find a copy, I'll pick it up and I will pass it on to somebody who I think should read it, because I think it's just an amazing, amazing book. So, where's my copy? Here it is in front of me, in fact. So, LTC Rolt, Sleep No More, Railway Canal and Other Stories of the Supernatural. Just what a fabulous book. So the inline here says, Rolton Railways, an unbeatable combination, and with the extra dimension of LTC Rolt's skills as a writer of supernatural tales, a book of ghost stories of real power and fear. First published in 1948 and frequently anthologised singly, these 12 stories are republished here for Rolt's railway and canal audience and for ghost story addicts who have recognised him as a real talent of imagination. An engineer by training, Rolt uses his knowledge of railways, canals, blast furnaces, racing cars and such to summon an elemental grim-crack villa, release malignant horrors in the machine shop of a factory, or with the down-night mountaineer from Carlisle to recreate the Garside Fell disaster, one of the most memorable of modern ghost stories. Bosworth Summit Pound, Holybank Foundry, The Mine, and Hath Music Hath Charms are here, with 8 other stories of quality. Rolt shows his readers the haunted wales of Quimgaron and the dripping woods of Wrekinside, and the strange mystery of the ruin on an island in an Irish lake. So, they are good. I mean, I think that is a great introduction to a book of horror stories. So, I shall list you the stories. So we have The Mine, The Cat Returns, Bosworth Summit Pound, New Corner, Quimgaron, A Visitor at Ashcombe, The Garside Fell Disaster, World's End, Hear Not My Steps, Agony of Flame, Holybank Foundry, Music Hath Charms. So, what a fine collection, but which are my favourite? So, I'm going to go through that. There's 5 in here that I think are just incredible, okay? You have The Mine. Now, if you read this one, and you've ever seen a movie called The Descent, you've got to read it to get what I mean, but when you get to the end, you think, hang on a minute, that sounds like something I've seen before. And I am convinced that somebody has read this story, and that's how they've come up with the creatures from The Descent. Of no doubt whatsoever. There's some fabulous bits in this. Let me just read you a little bit here. We found Joe Beecher in Dyke Wood, at the bottom of the old quarry, as there it is. We covered up his face quick with the coat. I didn't fear God nor man in them days, but it were too much for me, and it didn't seem right that a mortal face should take that shape. I mean, that just, wow, what does that lead into? But an amazing story. So yes, that's one of them. Now, Bosworth Summit Pound is about a canal, which again, let me have a say. A chap goes on to meet a friend in a canal, and he stays in one of the narrowboats, and it is a really creepy tale. If you've ever been on a narrowboat, you probably know what it's like. But honestly, it's, there's a couple of sections in it that are, it's just got some great writing in it, and there are some descriptions in it that are just like absolutely terrifying. And he goes into the sort of legend of this Mary Grimsden, who is said to haunt the canal where he's staying. Let me read you a section from this. It moved without sound, and only the face showed pale in the moonlight. For a time, the figure seemed to grow up beside the water, and Fawcett knew, without knowing why he knew, that it sought for something which it feared to find. Then, with a swift movement which suggested that it had been startled by some sound inaudible to Fawcett, the figure rose and turned to peer intently into the tunnel. I mean, that is just creepy. Now, my other favourite is New Corner, which is about racing cars. And basically, the story is they build a new racing track. But part of the racing track, there was like an ancient stone or some stones, like standing stones, but it was in the way, so they moved them. And effectively, anybody who drove over it, the car either stopped or breaks down, and it causes all sorts of problems. When they're building the racetrack, accidents keep happening, stuff gets moved, some of the builders fall ill, and no spoilers, but the very last line of this is all sorts of disasters happen. It's actually a really, really well written car race story, really exciting. But the very last line is, I think there is something on the inside of that fence that is best left alone. And I mean, this is a story full of dark shapes of all sorts of weird stuff. Okay, right. So my next favourite one is Quimgaron. Now, this is about a chap who goes out for a walk. He's got a trip. He's got to do a 2 or 3 day trip into the Welsh valleys, into this valley called Quimgaron, which is a ancient place. So let me read you a section from this. This sums the whole thing up of nature versus modernity. I believe, the other continued, that some evil force dominates Quimgaron. I think it is a natural force which man, in some remote time, released and harnessed to secret and perverted ends. For centuries this dark power has been, as it were, dammed up in this valley until it has soaked into the very stones of the place. This is why a more superficial mind than yours might imagine that it is a natural phenomenon. Outside interference has an effect upon it like that of a stone slung in a pool. That's why Quimgaron and its people have always implacably resisted intrusion. Wonderful, wonderful. And then my last favourite one is the Holy Bank Foundry. Now, this is some absolute top H.P. Lovecraft terror. So let me read you a little bit of this. At length, his straining ears caught what he could only describe later as a kind of slithering sound. It was faint, and the stillness was so intense that he thought it might merely be caused by some small settling movement of the sand. Also, the direction of the sound was indeterminate. It seemed to be everywhere and yet nowhere, so that he did not switch on his torch. The next instant the suspense was terminated in so sudden and shocking a fashion that the 50-year-old Arthur Clegg cried out involuntarily like a man on the point of waking from a nightmare. His left ankle was so abruptly and strongly gripped that he lost his balance and fell heavily, dropping his torch. Through his thin sock he could feel whatever held him with such crushing force was cold and slimy, and that it was moving in what afterwards he called a heaving sort of way. I mean, guys, the ending of that is incredible. Anyway, so there you go. LTC Rolt, Sleep No More, Railway Canal and Other Stories of the Supernatural. This is in part such a terrifying tales, and the thing is they are not that old. They are not from like 1902. These are like from the 1940s, but relevant even today, about people working in factories and car racing. And some of the stuff is just so dark and spooky, and this wonderful idea of nature saying to modern life, no, you're not going to get in our way. We're older than you. It's brilliant. If you like folk horror, this is a great folk horror tale, really, because it's ancient horrors stopping the new things of today. So do check it out. It's really, really good. Anyway, guys, I think I shall stop rambling on now, and that was very rambly, so I do apologise. I just want to say I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back rambling hopefully in a couple of weeks. Sorry, this was a little bit later. You can find me on dansmonsters.podbean.com or most of the podcast platforms like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and of course on YouTube. And if you're enjoying the show, please leave a review. It'd mean a lot. All the links will be in the show notes, obviously. I'll put some pictures of the book as well and see if there's anywhere on eBay you can get hold of them, and some of the other Tom Rolt stuff as well. Keep your eye on my socials for updates. As you know, I'm not on Twitter or Facebook. I am on Instagram, Dan's Monsters, and obviously on Substack, dansmonsters.substack.com, because everybody's got a Substack. And you can check out the website, dansmonsters.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can also do it at ko-fi.com, Dan's Monsters. If you want to see some videos of me making some of this stuff, model making, drawing, etc., more rambling, you can head over to youtube.com @themonsterbomb.club. And if you want to see my back catalogue of book reviews, you can check out libraryofdoom.medium.com, which I may start doing some of the reviews on here as well. As ever, a huge shout out to the awesome Myths and Monsters for letting me use the tracks for their epic album, Cecilia, for this podcast. You can find them on Instagram, myths_and_monsters, and check out their music on mythsandmonsters.bandcamp.com. Seriously magnificent stuff. I will put it all in the show notes. Thanks again, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. That was really rambly. I feel this is going to take a bit of editing. That's future me talking. Stick around for the closing tunes from the epic Myths and Monsters, and see you again soon. See you later, guys. Bye.